Voices here sounds very clear. Savings are grand, Bahama land. Family is there, bringing good cheer. Sun, sea, and sand, they'll understand. New Providence, San Salvador, Grand Bahama, Illutora. Where voices hit families just for Christmas. Where voices hit families just for Christmas. Call Emily and Monkey, call Abaco and Monkey, call Manawa and Coburtown and Fresh Street. That Island too. Call your grandma and your grandpa. They'd love to hear from you this year. Where voices hit families just for Christmas. Where voices hit families just for Christmas.
Sign up for Rap Voice Bahamaland for as low as $14.99 a month with unlimited local and nationwide calling. You'll be entered to win your mortgage and utilities for a full year. Rap Voice Bahamaland.
Rap Voices here sounds very clear. Savings are grand, Bahamaland.
An IDB report on the impact of value-added tax made public. The back and forth over sick pay for government workers continues. A man left homeless after a fire. The FNM remembers P. Anthony White. Plus, Biff brings Hollywood to the Bahamas again. Those stories and more coming up. I'm Nakia DeVoe, and this is NB12. Everyone, thanks for joining us here at Cable 12 Studios. Here are the stories coming out of the NB12 newsroom this Friday evening. The Ministry of Finance has released the Inter-American Development Bank study on the economic and social impact of value-added tax on the Bahamian economy. The report comes amid wide public pushback by the business sector and others as the deadline for implementation remains just months away. Juan McCartney takes a look at what the study found in this report.
At more than 160 pages, the IDB's report on the implementation of VAT is extensive. However, there are a few things that stand out. For instance, the IDB notes that when VAT is implemented at a rate of 15%, the purchasing power of the poorest in the nation will drop dramatically as inflation is guaranteed to rise in the first year. However, it says with proper social safety net programs beefed up, there's no doubt that the GDP can grow more than 16% in just over a decade, and public debt should drop dramatically. The report goes on in extensive detail about 16 models it ran on the Bahamian economy, looking at how it would be impacted depending on the level at which VAT would be implemented and how much tariffs would be reduced. The model that looks at the 15% broad implementation with hotels being taxed at 10% and customs duties being reduced by 15% with government social safety nets in place is the one that would show what is most likely to happen. And what it says is that prices will go up for sure in the first year and cause a drop in consumer demand. VAT introduction translates to lower disposable income, the report read, and poverty levels tend to be higher. In this scenario, the poorest 20% would see its expenditure fall by more than 11%, as inflation goes up by more than 3 points than normal in the first year. Results seem to indicate that the reduction of effective customs duties plus less public borrowing would lead to lower inflation more than the initial impact of the introduction of VAT. However, the spike in inflation is expected to disappear after the first few years if the government implements tax reform as planned. What the model also shows is that after the first year, Bahamians should see some beneficial effects in the cost of living. It means that there would be less debt, less inflation, and more investment by the government and ultimately the private sector in the long term, leading to growth in the economy. Lower public debt implies that there would be lower interest payments and additional surpluses that would contribute to lowering our debt even more, according to the IDB. After all, debt is how we got here. Government debt, when the fiscal year ends next June, is expected to hit $4.9 billion, more than 50% debt to GDP ratio. Right now, the government pays more than $230 million per year just to service the debt. When VAT is implemented, they're hoping that trend will start to go in the other direction. The government plans on putting VAT in place on July 1st, 2014. Prime Minister Perry Christie has said that the public education campaign should begin in earnest next year, Meantime, Ministry of Finance officials are expected to get a briefing by the IDB about this study on Monday. You can check out the report for yourself at www.bahamas.gov.bs/VAT. Reporting for NB12, I'm Juan McCartney.
Bahamas Electrical Workers Union President Stefano Green says he has no issue with the Prime Minister's decision to put an end to government workers collecting sick pay from both their employers and national insurance. That is, pending certain conditions. Dana Smith has the latest in this report.
Following the Prime Minister's call for double dipping to be outlawed as quickly as possible, Green said he doesn't have a problem with the practice being eliminated, provided it's done to all government sectors and employers continue to cover sick pay 100%.
I don't have a problem personally with it being stopped as long as the employer pays 100% whilst I'm sick. That's important. There has to be some type of compromise in there. And in any negotiation, there's a give and take. And I have no problem with National Insurance Act being amended to say can't receive sick benefit. But I have a problem when the law says that once you're sick, you receive full pay.
Green said one of the reasons why he would find the ending of the practice to be reasonable is because the sick pay collected from national insurance comes out of employees' final benefits.
And one of the important things that has not been said so far is that when you claim from national insurance your sick benefit, that comes out of your final benefits when you retire. And so you're actually claiming your own monies that will affect you when you retire. And nobody has ever said that, but that is very important.
Although not taking issue with Prime Minister Perry Christie's decree to, quote, outlaw double dipping, Green did question the Prime Minister's labeling of the practice as against the law. The union leader claimed in prior meetings with the Prime Minister and other officials, Christie was allegedly advised the double dipping practice was a legal one.
And I'm sure the first advice that he received was that the benefit that is being received right now by over 25,000 workers within this country is legal. That's the first advice that he would have received, because he received that advice in front of me. And so that's why I can say that without a doubt.
If the Prime Minister is now calling the practice illegal, Green said he would like clarification.
I don't know if he said illegal, and if he did, obviously he will have to clarify that one day.
Green said he has not officially spoken to other unions about his stance. He noted unionists would want to give up a benefit, but the topic is expected to be a priority at the next meeting of the National Congress of Trade Unions. Reporting for NB12, I'm Dana Smith.
In other news, police are investigating the cause of a fire which reportedly left a Big Pond resident homeless. Traffic came to a standstill and residents stood in shock as fire engulfed the 5-room structure. Firefighters managed to prevent the blaze from spreading to nearby homes, but officials say the house was destroyed. Vonning Toot has the story.
Fire officials raced to the scene after receiving frantic calls from Big Pond residents about this home, which caught fire shortly after 1 p.m. Firefighters were able to extinguish the blaze within minutes.
Fire broke out in the 5-room structure on Water Street this afternoon, causing smoke to billow over the Big Pond area. The sounds of sirens and crackling fire filled the air as fire ripped through the house, destroying everything inside. Levant Williams says he was at a nearby restaurant when he saw the plumes of smoke.
I see a little blaze coming, started from the back. Then when I look, it started to spread. And I look, the whole roof started to blaze off and everything just started to fall.
Fire burned through the roof, shattering windows and spreading to this black car. Sergeant Quincy McGregor says they responded quickly but could not save the structure.
We responded with 3 fire appliances and upon arrival we met this 5-room single-story stone structure engulfing flames. Fire was quickly brought under control and extinguished, and the aftermath would have left it destroyed.
Officials from the Bahamas Electricity Corporation were also called to the scene to disconnect power supply. Richard Ross, who lives next door, says he is relieved firefighters were able to contain the blaze before it spread to nearby homes. However, he says residents feel for the middle-aged man who has lived there alone for years after his mother passed away. Ross says the owner was not at home when the fire started.
It was windy. Good thing the wind was blowing in the next direction.
Does anyone live in this house?
Well, the lady, Matt Jones' son, live in the house. I don't know. I didn't see him home. I don't know where he is.
The owner of the house, he was nowhere to be found. So
Meantime, Sergeant McGregor says officials are concerned about the number of structural fires that occur during the Christmas season. He urged residents to take certain precautions to prevent the loss of life and property.
At times you'll find that we'll be placed in a position where there'll be some type of structural fires. We're just advising residents to take all precautions to ensure that their residents are safe from fires.
Officials have launched an investigation to determine the cause of today's fire. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Tude.
A man believed to be wearing an ankle bracelet collapsed on a public school campus this afternoon after being hit during a drive-by shooting on one of the island's busiest thoroughfares. Police say the shooting happened on Blue Hill Road near Town Center Mall in broad daylight. Officer in charge of the South Central Division, Superintendent Samuel McKinney, says police received reports of the incident around 12:30 this afternoon.
Preliminary reports tells us that person or persons who are the occupants of a dark vehicle, maybe the make is a Honda Accord, pulled up on a young man who was walking in this vicinity of AFRD school. They discharged several shots in his direction. He was struck to the upper torso.
The victim, believed to be in his late 20s or early 30s, reportedly staggered from the blood-spattered median to AF Adderley High School, where he collapsed. Superintendent McKinney says those students did not witness the incident. Today's shooting highlights the issue of gun violence in New Providence.
At the time of the incident, the school, the classes were held so that the students were not exposed to any form of danger. The level of violence in society is a major concern, and so it tells all of us as a community, faith-based persons, we have to come together.
McKinney says the victim was alert and was able to speak with EMS personnel as they transported him to hospital. His present condition is unknown. Police have charged an 18-year-old of South Beach in connection with last week's shooting death of Sylvester Woodside. Jadari Evans was not required to enter a plea to the charge when he made his initial appearance before the court today. 18-year-old Woodside was shot while walking in Jubilee Gardens. Evans has been remanded to Her Majesty's prison. Prosecutors plan to fast-track the case to the Supreme Court by a voluntary bill of indictment.